A husband walked into his home with his pregnant mistress and told his wife to leave. But the wife didn't cry. Instead, her calm reaction was the beginning of a shocking plan no one saw coming. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened next. Hello family, welcome to Tales by King. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. The sun was slowly setting over the peaceful neighborhood of Brookfield City. Golden light spread across the quiet streets, touching the roofs of the houses and reflecting softly on the windows of parked cars. It was the kind of evening when families returned home after long days, children played outside, and the smell of dinner floated gently through the air. Inside one of the most beautiful houses on Maplewood Street lived Amelia Carter and her husband Victor Carter. From the outside, their life looked perfect. Victor was a successful businessman who owned Carter Construction Group, a company that had grown quickly over the past few years. His name was becoming well known in the city. People respected him, and many believed he would soon become one of the wealthiest businessmen in Brookfield. Amelia, his wife, had once been a talented interior designer. Years earlier, she had worked on several luxury apartment projects and was known for her creative eye. But after marriage, Amelia made a choice. She decided to step back from her career and support Victor while he built his company. She believed in him. She believed in their future. And for 7 years, she gave her whole heart to their marriage. Every morning, Amelia woke up early before Victor left for work. She prepared breakfast, packed his lunch when he was too busy, and always reminded him to take care of himself. Whenever Victor faced problems in his business, Amelia sat beside him late into the night listening patiently as he talked through his worries. Sometimes she even helped him review contracts and financial plans. Victor often said to friends, "Amelia is my lucky charm. My success started when she came into my life." Back then, Amelia would simply smile and say nothing, because she never cared about taking credit. She only cared about building a life together. But recently, something had changed. Over the past few months, Victor had slowly become distant. He stayed out later than usual. Sometimes he returned home after midnight. When Amelia asked if something was wrong, Victor would always give the same short answer. "Work is stressful." At first, Amelia believed him. Running a business was not easy. But then the small signs began to appear. Victor stopped sharing details about his day. He spent more time on his phone. Sometimes when Amelia walked into the room, he quickly locked the screen, and the warmth that once filled their home slowly disappeared. Still, Amelia tried to remain patient. She believed that love required understanding. That evening, Amelia was in the living room arranging fresh white lilies in a glass vase on the center table. Flowers had always been one of her small joys. She liked filling the house with beauty and calm. Soft music played quietly from the speakers while the golden evening light poured through the large windows. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. Then suddenly, she heard the sound of a car stopping outside the house. Amelia looked toward the window. Victor rarely returned home before dark. So she walked closer to the curtains and gently pulled them aside. Her heart skipped. Victor's black luxury car was parked in front of the house. But he was not alone. Victor stepped out of the car first, adjusting his suit jacket as usual. Then he walked around to the passenger side and opened the door. A young woman slowly stepped out. Amelia frowned slightly. She had never seen the woman before. The woman looked elegant, wearing expensive clothes and high heels. Her long blonde hair rested neatly on her shoulders. But one thing caught Amelia's attention immediately. The woman was heavily pregnant. Amelia felt a strange feeling rise in her chest. Confusion. Concern. Victor spoke softly to the woman and gently helped her walk toward the house. The scene looked almost caring, almost intimate. Amelia's heart began to beat faster. A quiet voice inside her whispered that something was wrong, but she pushed the thought away. Victor would never do something like that to her. He loved her. At least, that was what she believed. She quickly opened the front door before they reached it. Victor looked slightly surprised to see her standing there. "Amelia," he said casually. The pregnant woman stood beside him silently. Amelia forced a polite smile. "Victor, who is she?" For a moment Victor simply stared at Amelia. Then his expression became strangely calm. Too calm. "This is Sophie," he said. Amelia waited. She expected Victor to say something like she is a business partner, or a relative, or someone who needs help. But Victor did not continue immediately. Instead, he stepped inside the house confidently, as if everything was normal. Sophie followed him. Amelia slowly closed the door behind them. Her heart was beating harder now. "Victor?" she asked again quietly. Victor finally turned to face her. Then he said the words that shattered her world. "She's pregnant with my child." For a moment Amelia could not breathe. The room felt suddenly smaller. The flowers in her hand trembled slightly. She thought maybe she misunderstood. "What did you say?" Victor spoke again, this time with cold certainty. "She's carrying my baby." The silence that followed felt heavy and painful. Amelia slowly looked at Sophie. Sophie did not look ashamed. In fact, a small confident smile appeared on her face. Victor placed his arm around Sophie's shoulder. Then he said something even more shocking. "She will be living here from now on." Amelia stared at him in disbelief. "You're joking, right?" Victor shook his head. "You and I have been married for 7 years, he said coldly. "And we still don't have children." Amelia's heart tightened. "That doesn't mean—" "My family name needs an heir," Victor interrupted. He gently touched Sophie's stomach. "And she is giving me one." Amelia felt tears slowly forming in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Victor looked around the house calmly. "You should start packing your things," he said. "This house belongs to me." The words hit Amelia like a storm. "Victor, you can leave tonight," he added. Sophie crossed her arms and watched quietly. She looked satisfied. Victor clearly expected Amelia to break down, to cry, to scream, to beg him not to destroy their marriage. But Amelia did none of those things. Instead, she slowly placed the flowers on the table. Then she looked at Sophie. Her voice was calm. "You must be tired," Amelia said gently. "Pregnancy is not easy." Victor frowned slightly. This was not the reaction he expected. Amelia walked toward the kitchen. "I'll make some tea." Sophie looked confused. Victor watched Amelia carefully. Something about her calmness felt strange. But he ignored it, because in his mind, the situation was already settled. What Victor didn't know was that Amelia had just made a silent decision, and the next move she was about to make would completely destroy the life he believed he controlled. That evening, the house that once felt warm and peaceful now felt strangely heavy with silence. Victor sat comfortably on the large leather sofa in the living room, while Sophie rested beside him, gently rubbing her pregnant stomach. The lights in the room were soft, but the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. From the kitchen, the sound of cups softly touching plates could be heard. Amelia was making tea. Victor frowned slightly. This was not the reaction he expected. When he imagined bringing Sophie home, he had expected chaos. He thought Amelia would cry, maybe scream, maybe throw things. He had even prepared a speech in case she caused a scene. But none of that had happened. Instead, Amelia was acting calm. Too calm. A few moments later, she walked back into the living room carrying a tray with 3 cups of tea. Her movements were steady and graceful, as if nothing unusual had happened. She placed the tray gently on the coffee table. Then she handed a cup to Sophie first. "You should drink something warm," Amelia said kindly. "It helps when you're tired." Sophie looked slightly uncomfortable. She had imagined humiliating Victor's wife. But now the situation felt strangely awkward. "Thank you," Sophie said quietly. Amelia then handed Victor his cup. Victor took it slowly, still watching her with suspicion. Finally, Amelia picked up her own cup and sat in the armchair across from them. For a moment, none of them spoke. The ticking of the wall clock seemed unusually loud. Victor finally broke the silence. "So when are you leaving?" he asked. His voice was direct. Cold. Amelia looked at him calmly. I will leave, she said softly. Victor nodded as if the matter was already finished. Good. But Amelia continued speaking. Just not tonight. Victor's eyebrows pulled together. What do you mean? Amelia took a small sip of tea before answering. I just need some time to organize a few things. Victor waved his hand dismissively. Fine. Do it quickly. Sophie shifted slightly on the sofa. Victor, she said softly, maybe we should give her a few days. Victor shrugged. I don't care. As long as she leaves. Amelia placed her cup down gently. You don't need to worry, she said calmly. I won't cause any trouble. Victor leaned back on the sofa, satisfied. That would be wise. For a few seconds, Amelia simply watched them quietly. Victor sitting proudly. Sophie leaning comfortably beside him. They looked almost like a couple who believed they had already won. But Amelia's mind was not focused on the present moment. Instead, memories slowly began to rise. Memories from years ago. The early days of Victor's business. Back then, Victor had been struggling badly. His company was small and drowning in debt. Banks refused to lend him money. Investors had no interest in his projects. Amelia remembered those nights clearly. Victor sitting at the dining table with stacks of unpaid bills. His hands covering his face in frustration. I'm going to lose everything, he once whispered. That night, Amelia made a decision that changed Victor's life. Her father had left her a large inheritance before he passed away. She had been saving it carefully. But when she saw how desperate Victor was, she gave him the money. It was not a small amount. It was enough to save the company. Enough to restart his projects. Enough to rebuild his future. Victor cried that night when she handed him the documents. I will never forget this, he promised. You're the reason I will succeed. Amelia believed him. She trusted him completely. But tonight, sitting in the same house, she realized something painful. Victor had forgotten that promise. Amelia. Victor's voice pulled her back to the present. She looked at him. You seem very calm, he said suspiciously. Why? Amelia smiled softly. Because anger will not change anything. Victor studied her face. Something about her expression made him uneasy, but he couldn't understand why. Well, Victor said finally, standing up, I'm going to rest. He placed his hand gently on Sophie's shoulder. You should rest too. Sophie nodded and slowly stood. Before leaving the room, she glanced once more at Amelia. But Amelia simply gave her a polite smile. Victor and Sophie walked upstairs. Their footsteps slowly disappeared down the hallway. Soon the house became completely quiet. Amelia sat alone in the living room for several minutes. The silence around her felt deep and peaceful. Then she slowly stood up. Her calm expression changed. The gentle smile on her face disappeared. In its place appeared something else. Determination. She walked quietly down the hallway toward a small room that Victor rarely entered. It was her private study. Inside the room stood a large wooden desk and a tall bookshelf. Amelia closed the door behind her. Then she walked to the wall where a framed painting hung. She gently lifted the painting. Behind it was a small hidden safe. She entered the code. The safe clicked open. Inside were several important documents neatly arranged in folders. Property papers, business agreements, bank investment records. Amelia carefully removed the files and placed them on the desk. She opened the first folder. Her eyes moved slowly across the pages. Then she opened the second one, and the third. Everything was exactly where it should be. Finally, she took out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts and selected a number. After a few rings, someone answered. Good evening, Mrs. Carter. Amelia's voice remained calm. Good evening, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison was the lawyer who had handled her inheritance years ago. I assume you didn't call just to say hello, he said kindly. Amelia looked toward the dark window. Downstairs, she could faintly hear Victor laughing in the bedroom with Sophie. Yes, Amelia said quietly. I believe it's time to activate the agreement. There was a brief silence on the other end. Mr. Harrison spoke carefully. Are you certain about this decision? Amelia closed the folder in front of her. I'm certain. Very well, the lawyer replied. Then we will begin the process tomorrow morning. Amelia nodded, even though he could not see her. Thank you. She ended the call and slowly returned the documents to the safe. Victor believed he owned everything. The house, the company, the success. But Victor had forgotten something very important. Years ago, when his company was about to collapse, it was Amelia's inheritance money that saved him. And before she invested that money, her lawyer had insisted on signing a very specific legal agreement. Victor had signed it quickly without reading it carefully. At the time, he was too desperate to pay attention to the details. Now those forgotten details were about to return. Amelia closed the safe. She turned off the light and walked out of the study. As she walked through the quiet hallway, her expression returned to its calm and peaceful appearance. Victor believed he had already won. But the truth was much different. The game had only just begun, and Victor had no idea that the woman he thought he could easily replace was about to change his entire life. The next morning began quietly, but the air inside the house felt different. Sunlight entered through the large windows of the dining room, spreading across the polished wooden table. Outside, birds could be heard singing softly, and the neighborhood looked peaceful as usual. But inside the Carter house, tension was quietly building. Victor woke up feeling confident. He believed the difficult part of his decision had already passed. In his mind, the situation was simple now. Amelia would pack her things and leave, and he would start a new life with Sophie and the baby. Everything seemed under control. He walked downstairs wearing a casual shirt and trousers, adjusting his watch as he entered the dining room. Sophie was already sitting at the table, eating breakfast slowly. A plate of toast and fruit sat in front of her. Amelia had prepared the meal. Victor looked around. Amelia stood in the kitchen calmly pouring coffee into cups. For a moment, Victor felt strangely uncomfortable again. She still looked peaceful. Too peaceful. He sat down beside Sophie. You slept well? He asked. Sophie nodded. Yes. The room was very comfortable. Victor smiled proudly. This house has always been comfortable. Amelia quietly brought 2 cups of coffee and placed them on the table. Your coffee, she said politely. Victor looked at her. You're still here, he said. Amelia nodded. Yes. I told you I had a few things to arrange. Victor shrugged. Just make sure you finish today. Amelia gave a small, polite smile. Of course. For a moment, the 3 of them sat in silence. Victor began eating his breakfast. He looked relaxed, as if nothing serious had happened the night before. But suddenly, the doorbell rang. Victor frowned. Who could that be this early? Amelia calmly walked toward the front door. I'll check. Victor continued eating. But moments later, he heard voices in the hallway. More than one person. Then footsteps entered the living room. Victor turned his head. 3 people walked inside. A tall man in a dark suit, a woman holding a folder, and a middle-aged man wearing a formal jacket. Victor immediately stood up. What is this? He demanded. The tall man stepped forward politely. Good morning, Mr. Carter. Victor recognized him immediately. Mr. Harrison? It was Amelia's lawyer. Victor looked confused. What are you doing here? Before the lawyer could answer, Amelia walked into the room behind them. Her expression was calm, composed, confident. Victor frowned. Amelia, what is going on? Mr. Harrison spoke clearly. We are here regarding the ownership and management of Carter Construction Group and this residential property. Victor laughed lightly. That's simple. I own them. Sophie shifted nervously in her chair. But the lawyer calmly opened the folder in his hand. I'm afraid the situation is slightly different. Victor's smile slowly faded. What do you mean? Mr. Harrison placed several documents on the dining table. These are the legal agreements signed 7 years ago when Mrs. Amelia Carter invested capital into Carter Construction Group. Victor's eyebrows tightened. That was just financial support. Mr. Harrison shook his head politely. No, Mr. Carter. It was a formal investment. Victor felt his stomach tighten. What investment? The lawyer pointed to the document. Mrs. Carter invested the majority of her inheritance money into the company when it was facing bankruptcy. Victor's face grew tense. Yes, but that money helped grow the business. Correct, the lawyer replied. And according to this signed agreement, Mrs. Carter became the majority shareholder. The room fell silent. Victor stared at the paper. What nonsense is this? The lawyer turned another page. Mrs. Carter legally owns 60% of Carter Construction Group. Victor's heart skipped. That's impossible. Mr. Harrison calmly pointed to the bottom of the page. Your signature is here. Victor looked down. And there it was. His signature. 7 years ago. At that time, he had been desperate. His company was collapsing. Bills were everywhere. He had signed every document placed in front of him without reading carefully. Victor's voice became unsteady. That doesn't mean anything. The lawyer continued calmly. It also means Mrs. Carter legally controls the company's leadership decisions. Victor's breathing became heavier. What are you trying to say? Mr. Harrison spoke clearly. Mrs. Carter has decided to remove you from the position of CEO effective immediately. The words hit Victor like thunder. What? Sophie stood up suddenly. Victor, what is happening? Victor looked at Amelia. You did this. Amelia remained calm. You told me to leave the house. She gently placed another document on the table. This property was purchased using my inheritance money. Victor grabbed the document and looked at it quickly. His face slowly lost all color. According to the property records, Amelia Carter was the legal owner. Victor felt the ground beneath him disappear. This house is yours. Amelia nodded softly. Yes. Mr. Harrison closed the folder. Mr. Carter, according to the legal agreement, Mrs. Carter has full rights to the property. The property manager stepped forward politely. You will need to vacate the house today. Sophie's eyes widened. You mean we have to leave? Victor could barely speak. This is insane. Amelia finally spoke again. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. You told me to pack my things. She looked around the room slowly. But it turns out, she paused. This house was never yours to give away. Victor stared at her. The woman he believed he could easily replace. The woman he thought was weak. Now stood before him stronger than ever. His business. His home. His power. All gone in a single morning. Victor suddenly realized something terrifying. The woman he betrayed had been quietly holding the keys to his entire life. And now, she had taken them back. By the afternoon of that same day, everything had changed. The large Carter house, once filled with Victor's confidence and pride, now felt strangely quiet. Outside the gate, a black taxi waited. Victor stood on the driveway, holding a single suitcase. The man who once believed he owned everything now looked lost. The lawyer's words still echoed in his mind. You must vacate the property today. Sophie stood beside him, her arms crossed tightly. The confident smile she once wore had completely disappeared. She looked around the house nervously. Victor, tell me this isn't real, she whispered. Victor did not answer. For the first time in many years, he had no control over the situation. Inside the house, Amelia stood near the window watching quietly. Her expression was calm, but not cruel. There was no anger on her face. Only peace. The driver outside honked softly, waiting. Sophie turned toward Victor. So what happens now? She asked. Victor rubbed his forehead. We'll find somewhere else. Sophie looked at the small suitcase. Somewhere else? With what money? Victor stayed silent. The truth was painful. Without control of the company, his bank accounts were frozen until the legal transition was completed. Sophie stared at him in disbelief. You're serious? Victor could not meet her eyes. A few seconds passed. Then Sophie slowly stepped away from him. Her voice became cold. I didn't sign up for this. Victor looked up. Sophie, you told me you were powerful, she continued. You told me everything belonged to you. Victor tried to explain. I didn't know about the contract. But Sophie shook her head. This is your problem. Without another word, she walked away toward the street and called another taxi. Victor watched her leave. Just like that, the woman he had risked his marriage for was gone. He stood alone in front of the house. The same house where he once walked proudly through the door every evening. Now he was just a stranger outside the gate. After a long moment, Victor picked up his suitcase and slowly walked away. Inside the house, Amelia quietly closed the curtain. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. Because victory did not feel the way Victor once imagined it would. Instead, she felt something else. Freedom. Weeks later, under Amelia's leadership, Carter Construction Group changed dramatically. The employees noticed the difference immediately. Amelia treated everyone with respect. She listened to workers. She improved working conditions. She created programs to help employees and their families. Productivity increased. Projects became more successful. Soon the company became even stronger than before. But Amelia's vision did not stop with business. She also created a charity foundation that helped women who had been abandoned or mistreated rebuild their lives. Many people in the city began to admire her. Newspapers started calling her the woman who turned betrayal into strength. But Amelia never chased attention. She simply focused on building a better future. 3 months later, one quiet afternoon, Amelia was leaving the office building when she saw a familiar figure standing near the entrance. Victor. He looked different. His expensive suits were gone. He wore simple clothes now. His face looked tired. For a moment, he hesitated before approaching her. "Amelia," he said softly. Amelia stopped. She looked at him calmly. "Hello, Victor." He lowered his eyes. "I know you probably don't want to see me." Amelia said nothing. Victor continued. "I've been thinking about everything that happened." His voice was heavy with regret. "I thought success made me powerful. I thought money made me important." He looked up slowly. "But I lost the most important thing I had." Amelia watched him quietly. Victor swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." The words came out slowly. Honest. For the first time in many years, Victor was not speaking as a businessman. He was speaking as a man who had finally understood his mistakes. Amelia studied his face for a long moment. Then she spoke gently. "I believe you." Victor looked surprised. "You do?" Amelia nodded. "Yes." Victor's voice trembled slightly. "Do you hate me?" Amelia shook her head slowly. "No." Victor looked confused. "Why?" Amelia smiled softly. "Because hate only keeps us tied to the past." She looked up at the tall glass building behind her. "My future is too important for that." Victor felt his chest tighten. "You deserve everything you've achieved," he said quietly. Amelia looked at him one last time. "I didn't do this for revenge." Victor frowned slightly. "Then why?" Amelia answered calmly. "To remind myself that kindness should never mean accepting disrespect." Victor nodded slowly. He finally understood. Amelia turned and began walking toward the building. Victor watched her go. The woman he once thought he could easily replace had become someone far greater than he ever realized. And in that moment, Victor learned the most painful lesson of his life. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is not the one who speaks the loudest or holds the most power. Sometimes it is the person who walks away from betrayal and still chooses to move forward with dignity. As Amelia entered the building, sunlight reflected across the glass doors, and Victor stood there quietly, realizing something beautiful and painful at the same time. He had lost a wife, but the world had gained an extraordinary woman. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this story worth watching. If you do, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Like, comment, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.